So the world, it's a-changin'. The Accord, the Camry, the Altima, no longer the best-selling vehicles in their respective brands. Rather, today is all about CR-V, RAV4, and Rogue, which sets the stage for quite an investment into each one of those properties, and in turn, a hell of a fight. Well, in this round, Nissan, they've decided to bring a gun to a knife fight. Let's you and I kick this off with name, rank, and serial number, and that would be a 2.5 four-cylinder engine that does not have a turbocharger. Good for 181 horsepower that comes in at 6,000 RPM, and very conveniently 181 pound-feet of torque that comes in at a somewhat aggressive 3,600 RPM. Now, three things we need to point out. Number one, for this generation of Rogue, this engine is now direct injected. Number two, the engineers have elected to mount the engine lower in the vehicle. Translated, that would mean better on-road driving dynamics. We'll discuss this later in the episode. And then number three, I tried to get somebody at Nissan to confirm that there will be a hybrid version of the Rogue. Because if you're reading the tea leaves in this segment, the Honda's got a hybrid, the Toyota's got a hybrid, even the Ford's got a hybrid. So I'm willing to bet money that there will be a hybrid version of the Rogue in the near future. While we're talking about efficiency, the fuel economy is pretty good, but that depends on whether you have a front-wheel drive or an all-wheel drive. It also depends on whether you have a fancy one or not a fancy one. A front-wheel drive that's not fancy, 27, 35, 30. If it's very fancy with all-wheel drive, those numbers go down each by about 2 mpg. Now, yeah, this is not a Patrol or a Tahoe, but it still can tow. Not that much, 1,350 pounds. Two interesting tidbits that factor into our discussion today. Number one, while I wouldn't call this a lightweight, it is surprisingly lower weight than we would expect in a vehicle of this size. 3,371 pounds for the most basic vehicle. The car you and I are driving is 3,633 pounds, meaning it's more fancy. The other tidbit, this has, what, about 10 more horsepower than the vehicle it replaces? So with that, yeah. Okay, so I would argue you and I are facing a slight challenge in pulling power here, and I say that because this is mainly a front-wheel drive vehicle, even those that are all-wheel drive only sends torque to the back when it needs it. That said, the challenge is the transmission. It's a Nissan, so it's got a CVT, therefore no gears. I would argue this is now a significantly better engine that offers a good amount of pulling power. Like, let's get into it, but you really need to thrash it and wring its neck to get power out of it to get it through that transmission. Whether it's been the Honda, the Toyota, the Chevy, or the Ford, these vehicles, you really couldn't call them attractive or pretty. They were more handsome because they're Me Too cars. Hey, we got all-wheel drive. Yeah, me too. Hey, we got a hybrid. Yeah, me too. And something tells me the folks at Nissan wanted to get off that merry-go-round because now they have indeed created a vehicle that is easy on the eyes. If you go back, what, a year and a half, 2 years, where they came out with a concept car that led to this vehicle. If you look at the front end of the serial production vehicle we are driving today, it's almost identical to that concept car. They even took some of the details of the concept car and have built it into the serial production car we are driving. Like, for example, the A-pillars, they're black no matter the color. Even the proportions, especially in the rear, that comes directly from the concept car. And it's not just the design, some of the construction is, best way to put it, elevated considering what the vehicle is. There's high-strength steel construction in 35% of the vehicle, and then the hood and the fenders are now aluminum. So I have some rather big news to share with you here. The ass end of this car is no longer a trailing beam. There is an honest-to-goodness multi-link rear suspension that transforms the ride quality of this car. There used to be very little composure in the ride quality of these things, specifically in managing the pitch. That's the side-to-side motion. Here, I would argue this is now closer. It's not quite what the Mazda CX-5 is, but it's closer to what the Mazda delivers in overall ride composure. Now, why is that important? Just look at the mission of this vehicle. It's designed to transport a good amount of people and a good amount of dogs without shuffling them from side to side violently as you go around even smaller turns like that. And there, as we get a bit more aggressive through this turn, I would say mission very much accomplished. Let's you and I be direct with one another. People do not buy this type of vehicle because they want to. They buy them because they have to. As such, they are more on the side of utility than being luxury or fancy. And when I stepped off the barge in Santa Barbara to drive this thing, I was not expecting this interior. When you open the door, yeah, Nissans are screwed together very well. They have been for years. But you don't expect like contrasting stitching. You don't expect a little bit better leather in a serial production Nissan. You don't expect some of the detailing and the design that's been put into this vehicle. Alfonso, who is the chief designer of Nissan, it's very clear the people who do color and trim at Nissan spent more time on this car than I would argue the past 3 cars put together. Then there are some items that make the vehicle stand out. Like, for example, there is an adjustment for the temperature in the rear. There are even heated seats in the rear, yet the detail that stands out to me absolutely has to be the steering wheel. Both its design as well as its tactile feel is more at home in something like a Z car, not something that is a practical vehicle that is designed to cart the rugrats and the dogs around town. So for a while now, I've been pissing and moaning about the placement of shifters up here, especially in vehicles like these. And yes, even a totally unpractical person like myself can understand why packaging engineers do this. They're trying to allow for more space here, cup holders, some storage here, and maybe storage down here. And really what's going on here is there's an electronic link to the transmission. It's no longer mechanical. That frees the packaging engineers to do more with the space without forcing the shifter to go up here. Now, I'd like to add that this is a triumph of packaging design, and others, especially others that have shifters up here, should look at this and seriously consider pilfering this idea. Yes, it is indeed that time again to play your favorite game, Mind the Options game, with today's contestant, something incredibly practical. Yet even I must admit, it's attractive. 2021 Nissan Rogue, the one you and I are driving, is 3 levels up. The SL for a base price of $32,000. Now, I do need to point something out as a Dave Ramsey cheapskate. This is not the cheapest one. There is an S that has a base price of $25,650. And when you consider that the average price of a new vehicle today is north of $35,000 and the average payment, and you guys know I don't like payments, is $500, it is heartwarming to see a vehicle that is significantly lower than that, that does have some stuff in it like Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, as well as some other things. Now, the one you and I are driving is front-wheel drive. Add all-wheel drive to any of these, that's an additional $1,400. From there, the only thing you can pick is the color. I have chosen the Caspian Blue. I would argue this is the prettiest one on offer, but will admit, in some lights, it looks purple. The interior is almond leather, which is standard on the SL. Now, there is an SL Platinum package, which consists of a fancier Bose stereo and the active cruise control, the ProPilot Assist. We will be talking more about this later in the episode. $1,230. To that, the only thing we add is the destination and handling from Smyrna, Tennessee at $1,095 for a total retail price of $34,325. Now, one more hint device here. There is a Platinum model that has a more fancy dashboard, bigger center stack, as well as a bigger screen in the instrument binnacle that is somewhat reminiscent of the Audi virtual cockpit. That one with all-wheel drive is the fanciest one on offer for $36,830. A couple of years ago, you and I drove the then all-new Nissan Leaf, actually not far from here, and that was the first Nissan we tested with the ProPilot Assist. Think of that as Nissan speak for active cruise control, sort of level 2 autonomy. No, you can't take your hands off the wheel for like minutes at a time, but it will keep you in the lane while managing your speed. This ushers in 2 changes, and both of them are pretty sizable. The first is connecting the ProPilot system with the navigation, so it's kind of like that Porsche InnoDrive system, where it can take into account where you're going or whatever you put in for the destination, and can adjust the vehicle's efficiency over the course of the route. And the second change expands the stop and go functionality of the entire system. The previous derivation would switch off the ProPilot Assist if the vehicle was stopped for 3 seconds or more in traffic. Now they've raised that threshold to 30 seconds. So after 30 seconds, to go back into ProPilot Assist, one has to hit the gas or hit the ProPilot button once the car is back in motion. And with that, you and I need to focus on the elephant in the room, that is, Nissan Rogues have sold incredibly well, year in, year out, for a very long time, because they are aggressively marketed on price. Now, as we learn in the options game, that's not changing. What has changed? This is now a downright pleasant place to be, to the point where it's a complete departure, not just from Rogues of the past, but from even recent Nissans, to the point where I kind of hope we see this change in other Nissans coming down the road. And I would go so far as to saying, this is now not just a strong contender, but it's a really good car, and the only thing keeping it from being a really great car is the lack of gears in the transmission.